Sustainability in cattle farming in Australia. Understanding the humanity factor versus human needs. Australia is among the world's largest, most successful and efficient producers of commercial livestock and a leader in the export of beef. The steady rise in demand for sale and high quality beef, combined with Australia's focus on meeting consumer needs, has served the sector well at home and overseas. The live trade is a significant contributor to the Australian rural economy and has provided an important market for Australian cattle, sheep and goats producers for more than 30 years. Australians consume an average of 30.9 kilograms of beef each year. The total value of Australia's beef industry is $17 billion, and Australia collectively runs 25 million cattle across 200 million hectares, with almost half being raised for beef production. There are over 47,000 businesses involved in the cattle supply chain, and that's over half of all the agricultural businesses in Australia. The number of cattle in Australia makes it a relatively small producer on a global scale. However, due to its small population, Australia exports around 60% of produce, making it the world's third largest beef exporter behind India and Brazil. An Australian Beef Sustainability Report recently outlined its role in sustainability development. It defines sustainability as the production of beef in a manner that is socially, environmentally and economically responsible through the care of natural resources, people in the community, the health and welfare of animals, and the drive for continuous improvement. If we look at sustainability in beef production, there are many interconnections between economic, social and environmental responsibilities. One such issue is demand for leaner and organic grass-fed meat. What the next few slides will highlight is that organic and leaner isn't necessarily greener. It will illustrate the negative feedback loop that organic meat is not as sustainable economically or environmentally as more intensive grain-fed or grain-finished beef. It will investigate possible solutions in the production of organic grass-fed Australian beef to make it more sustainable. Most Australian beef is grass-fed and then finished in grain feedlots for weight gain in the last 60 to 300 days. Australia's biggest export competitor competing for the Chinese market is the US, where cattle are mostly raised entirely on grain. Australia's grass-fed beef has a lot less total fat, more omega-3 fatty acids, reduces the risk of cancers and heart disease, and is rich in antioxidants. Methane emissions is the biggest environmental problem for beef production. This is a result of the fermentation process that breaks down cellulose in the stomach, generating methane and then expelling it through burps. Methane's contribution to climate change is over 20 times more harmful than carbon dioxide over a 100-year period. Society's demand for leaner and organic beef is actually more harmful to the environment. This is the negative feedback loop. Though grass-fed cattle are sometimes touted as greener, this isn't true for methane emissions. It's more of a reference to green pastures than anything to do with the environment. A high-fibre, low-carb and low-fat food, grass makes cows roughly twice as gassy as grain-based diets do. So what are the solutions? 3-NOP is an organic compound. The compound inhibits the enzyme that catalyses methane production. After a 2-week trial, methane output dropped by roughly 30%, and studies reveal the cows suffered no negative effects, but the drug is yet to be FDA approved. Steam flacking and dry rolling are the most common grain processing methods to improve starch digestibility. In experiments, there was approximately 20% less methane produced for animals consuming steam flacked corn versus dry rolled corn. Australia's CSIRO has identified a specific seaweed and algae mixed feed have shown promising results and could be a solution that ticks the inclusiveness, connectivity, equity, prudence and security boxes. Research showed that adding dried seaweed to a cow's diet led to an 80% reduction in methane output for a 3% diet of seaweed. However, harvesting enough seaweed and at what cost is a major challenge. Processing of animals. The transportation of animals is essential in commercial agriculture. The process of moving animals from farm to abattoir is an environmental cost and contributes to the greenhouse gas emission concerns for the agriculture and livestock industry. A 2016 study found the impact of animals' welfare is a major contributing factor in producing quality beef. Continuous research has shown significant links between the animal's behavioural state and its physiological state. The transportation of cattle is the start of meat processing. Animals are at risk during transport of stress, overcrowding, bruising, and factors that have implications for the humane treatment of the animal and significant loss of product quality. Livestock Production Assurance have strict guidelines for the transportation of animals, including feeding, schedules, curfews, and health. In 1992, there were 223 meat processing establishments registered in Australia. Cattle slaughtered in Australian abattoirs are restrained upright and stunned, including animals in compliance with halal Islamic requirements. Stunning results in a decreased stress of the animal and superior meat quality. At this point, the animal is suspended for processing, the carcasses are skinned, and the hides are preserved for leather products, and other byproducts are utilised in production of pharmaceuticals, animal feed, fertiliser, and edible fats. Abattoir waste is a major environmental challenge throughout the world. It's highly concentrated wastewater with 45% soluble and 55% suspended organic composition. There are no organised strategies for disposal of solid or liquid waste generated by these abattoirs. The solid waste goes to landfill, while the liquid waste is processed in sewerage systems or in water bodies. A future plan for waste reduction and management needs to be addressed as a social and environmental concern.
Farmers have been implementing farming techniques to protect soil and replenish their fields in many ways since the pre-modern era. Many solutions are still in practice today and often depend on the size of the field, its core production purpose, and a few priority metrics or problem areas. For example, crop rotation prevents erosion and reduces pests by growing different crops from one year to the next, yet it just addresses the production of potential livestock feed and doesn't systematically interconnect link problems through to grazing or a feedlot. In livestock production, we can consider field usage in two ways: the physicality of holding the livestock, but also by growing the produce they eat. Both of these have sustainability implications and they shouldn't be looked at in isolation. Typically, feedlot cattle and field replenishment is very linear. Cattle are weaned and will be kept in feedlots to start their stockering phase in order to facilitate the development of things like bone and muscle tissue. During this phase, cattle are introduced to grain to reach the desired weight before being taken to abattoir. In larger industrial farms where feedlot cattle are the key produce, land becomes continuously used, either for the animal or for feeding the animal. It isn't given any time to rejuvenate or replenish, which leads to throwing natural systems out of balance, primarily due to erosion and loss of fertility. Livestock farming and agricultural as a whole must work in harmony with the natural environment, which starts with the soil that holds water and nutrients. A sustainable process should keep the soil in balance. Crop rotation and no-till was introduced to help this. And this is where a more holistic grass-fed livestock process came into play. This diagram illustrates a systematic thinking approach to a combination of farming techniques to enable sustainable development by addressing the 5 key metrics of inclusiveness, connectivity, equity, prudence, and security. A continuous cycle that does not wear out the land or the farmer, replenishes the soil, livestock and crops, enables people to continue to farm in a diverse, profitable and environmentally sound and socially acceptable environment. Living on the land and being a farmer has always invoked a vision of hard work and hard times. Whilst the genetics of the cattle hasn't changed drastically, the technology and the innovation has significantly, and it shows no signs of stopping. Fast forward to farming today and let's peek into the future. And our farmers have everything from genetic superior herds through to drones for paddock inspections. Nutrition has become big business. Now your phone is the greatest tool to ensuring your cattle are receiving the best nutrition. This is derived from software that gives you the most cost-effective feed formulation. What and where does this technology all lead us to? And who is driving the change? Consumers are becoming more and more conscious of the paddock to plate journey, and as a result of more prevalent data and the digital age. The humanity factor, which we did not previously see, is now in our face, and to the morally conscious person, we cannot be arrogant to the choices that we make. Our consumption of our beloved animals hasn't changed that significantly over the last 30 years. However, our attitudes have. RSPCA approved, free range, human choice, organic, and the names and labels are endless. However, what do they mean and how do they influence our choices to ideally create a more humane life for our cattle? Ethics, animal welfare, and food safety are all influencing our choices as consumers, and the abundance of at-hand information is helping us understand the full paddock to plate journey. Both farmers and consumers are learning about traceability, stress management, and all-important feed and our pasture quality. All of these vital elements must carefully be juggled to contribute to both the welfare of the cattle and the quality of the meat we source. You, the consumer, has the final say. Your knowledge, your understanding, and your ethics in what you will eat will continually drive the changing face of how farmers produce and treat their livestock. Take Feather and Bone as a good example. They do not hide the fact they are suppliers of fine cuts of meats, they actually advise you the exact point of origin and how your cut of meat was produced. These boutique suppliers have a cult-like following and the trend is growing fast.